Following video is brought to you by BSEN, Boston Sports Entertainment Network. Please subscribe, hit that like button, and as always, leave a comment, and thank you for enjoying the video.
I got the Boston Celtics going to the final.
I got to win with y'all.
It's time to represent your city. Put your hands up. College, you know we do it for Boston. Hey, ain't nobody gonna like Boston. Yeah, hey. Can't nobody do it like Boston. Where the legends get made, where the banners get raised, bright lights, big stage. Boston. All the fire we bring in a city full of rings, it's a beautiful thing out in Boston. And you ain't hard like that. You don't put it on the line with your squad like that. That's right, Boston. All we do is win like cigars in the gym, and we at it again to say, Beantown, what's up? What's up? 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 Feel the energy shift, now we jumping at the gym. Represent, showing out how we ball above the rim. Larry Legend, 86, to the truth in 08. Cement your name with the all-time great. Still banner 18 in the Raptors. Celtic green, only green that matters. It's about that time. Ain't another city that's louder than mine. Always gonna shine with the game on the line. What you think was gonna happen, man? That's how we do it in Boston. Ain't nobody gonna like Boston. Yeah. Ain't nobody do it like Boston.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Dynasty Proud podcast brought to you by BSEN. My name is Jason. He's Alex. Alex, what's going on?
How's it going, Jason? Just enjoying this 80-degree day down here in South Florida.
Yeah, I believe it's 60 degrees today, which is pretty good for us in March.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty good day so far. So we were supposed to have Justin Turpin from WEI come on today, but because of scheduling issues, we weren't able to make that happen. So I believe he'll be coming on next Friday at 2 p.m. So stay tuned for that. But I do want to get into our first topic, which is Bucks and Celtics. They played a pretty good game at the Garden a couple of days ago. No Giannis, but the Celtics took care of business beating the Bucks. Alex, do you take away any important parts from that game?
I mean, I want to congratulate the Bucks and their fans on their second moral victory against us this season. So they're actually 3-0, 2 moral victories, and then the one on the fifth game and 7-night back-to-back. But, I mean, the only time we've seen these teams real healthy with, like, equal rest was the first game of the season. And both games in Boston were very, very identical, where the Celtics jumped out to a big lead, held a double-digit lead near 20 for most of the game, let their foot off the gas and got complacent, and the Bucks came back. It was never really a threat. It would get within 1-2 possessions towards the end, but the Celtics were in control the whole time, and they were able to close both those games out. So, I mean, you can tip your hat to the Bucks for, giving a good effort without Giannis, but at the end of the day, the Celtics won the game. So, this could be a team we see down the road. Maybe I get it. They play again once next month. I would say the Celtics would be playing nobody, but due to, NBA rules, since it is a nationally televised game, they can't have more than one player sit. That was an all NBA or all-star the last 3 years, unless it's like a serious injury. So we may get, less minutes from them. So I don't take anything away from that game, but we'll see if we meet down the road.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it was a pretty good game. Obviously, you don't like to see the Celtics give up a 20-point lead to the Bucks, obviously without Giannis. So that kind of, you may feel a little iffy about that. But I'm just going over the stats right now. I mean, Tatum had a pretty good game, shooting 4 for 7 at the 3-point line, finished with 31. Derek White, who's having a great couple of days, scored 23, 4 of 11 from the 3-point line. And then Jaylen Brown had 21. So it's not like, the Celtics had a horrible game. You just wish that they would, stop giving up like massive leads, even though the Bucks didn't tie him or, go ahead. It sucks to see that. But yeah, I mean, they played a pretty good game.
So I think it's human nature a lot of times to let your foot off the gas when you're up big, especially, we'll get into Atlanta after this, but, in this game, we're in control the whole time. It's a 20-point lead, going into the fourth quarter or near that. And it's tough when you're up 20 to like, okay, let's push it to 30 to 40 when it's already the fourth quarter. Like, naturally, you're going to be a little bit less aggressive. You're going to probably settle a little bit more than you should. The defensive, mentality and the other end will suffer a little bit. And all you need to do is give an opponent, a couple easy looks, let them get a few baskets, 20 becomes 18, becomes 14, becomes 12. All of a sudden the pressure starts switching. Then it becomes harder to hit open shots or to find open shots. And it just seems like the other team gets into a rhythm. We saw that with Cleveland, saw that with Atlanta, saw that with Milwaukee in that game. But it can only take so much away for Giannis should be playing in a series that we see him down the road, if they can get out of the first round this year. So we'll see at that point, but home court advantage will be a big thing, and we've just looked like a Goliath at home this year. So I have faith in us against Milwaukee. Milwaukee doesn't, to me, view it as a real threat. Of course, that's a team if you play around with, they have the talent to be able to take it to you. If you give them the opportunity, they will. But the Celtics, you'd like to think, come playoff time, they've learned from their mistakes. They stop playing with their food and extending series and games longer than they need to.
Well, you just mentioned it right there. That's the biggest thing for me is the Celtics are going to see a team like Atlanta or Pacers, Orlando, whoever in the first round, and you want them to take care of business, finish them 4 or 5 games, and move on, right? You don't want it to linger like last season against Atlanta. I think it went 7 games. You don't want that, right? You want to take care of it, move on, get rested, because you're going to play a better opponent in the second round. So, and I think that's kind of what people get a little scared about is when the Celtics at the end of the season, they're giving up leads to these, not awful teams, not awful, but just teams that aren't at their level, and people freak out about it, right? I mean, we saw it, the Atlanta game is tough because I don't really want to spend a lot of time on it, but it's you give up a 30-point lead, you end up losing, okay, they were missing White and Drew, it's the end of the season. These games don't mean anything. They're not going to change the seeding or the standings or where the Celtics finish. And people are they're freaking out about it.
Also in the fourth quarter of that game, you had Svi Mykhailiuk, you had Jaden Springer, and you had Luke Cornett playing half the quarter. I would like to imagine in a playoff game that won't be the case. So, and then you had Peyton Pritchard, as great as he's been, and he's everything you could have asked out of him, you've gotten and more this year. But you'd like to think he's not going to be, playing defense down the stretch in fourth quarters of these games. So, having a Drew Holiday or Derek White out there, it's not that they can't lose. It's not that they're invincible or unbeatable, but the margin for error increases dramatically with them out there. And then it's like I said, it's like an avalanche. Things start heading in one direction, they seem to not be able to stop. Like the Dean Wade experience in the fourth quarter of the Cleveland game, that shooter, I forgot what his name was, but him, Garrison Matthews, Wesley Matthews, all these guys hitting threes that it's almost like you tip your cap, it's just one of those nights.
Yeah.
They blew a 30-point lead, but it's the amount of media criticism that the Celtics get every single time they lose is insane. They've lost 15 games all year, and it's every single time they've lost, it meant that this team is not a true contender. They're frauds. This means that really their season's over. But that doesn't extend to other teams. The Bucks lost last night to the Lakers, which is, it's great karma that they were so loud and boisterous on Twitter after we blew the 30-point lead. Then the next night to blow a 20-point fourth quarter lead. Actually, that's worse because ours started in the second quarter. It was an 8-point game to start a 6-point game to start the fourth quarter against Atlanta. At that point, it's a ball game. It was a 21-point lead in the end of the third quarter, and it was a 19-point lead with 8 minutes left in the fourth. That's harder to do. The Celtics managed to do it against Cleveland, but that's harder to do, especially at home when you have your full roster and then LeBron James is not playing on the other side. So, like I said, I don't think it's that big of a deal for the Bucks either. But if you're going to be fair, if you're going to call out the Celtics, who honestly had much less to play for, the Bucks are still fighting for seeding. They're only 2 games up on third. They're 2.5 up on Perkins' New York Knicks for fourth. So they actually do need these games more. Who gives a shit? We lost to Atlanta. We could lose to Atlanta again on Thursday. If we play them in a series and we take it serious, there's no reason they should lose a game in that series. The problem they had last year is they played around, they blew them out in game 1. They let it get closer in game 2. They lost game 3. And they played around in game 5. They extended series much longer than they needed to by not taking it seriously. Maybe they did it the other night. You can understand it the other night, complacency. You get up 30, you're kicking the shit out of this team. You're just it's not even worth your effort almost. And then you let that team come back in the game. I think in this playoff run, the veteran additions we've made, the maturity level, the common goal that they have at the end, I think they will take care of business, and I have faith in that.
Yeah, I mean, right now, this team, when they're playing against Atlanta, Detroit, the Wizards, they're just on cruise control right now. They're never playing with a full roster. These guys, they're not going to, put probably max effort into beating the Detroit Pistons with a Cade Cunningham that's not playing. and a Jalen Durant who's not playing. We're cruising to stay healthy to get to the playoffs, and hopefully by then we can turn it on. I think people are worried that maybe if we're going to be cruising for too long, we're going to have trouble turning it on in the playoffs. But I like to think this team is different with the acquisition of Porzingis and Drew. And Drew, he's already won, he's done it, so maybe he's a guy they can lean on if we, for some weird reason, see that happening in the first round. Hopefully he'll speak up and kind of tell these guys to step it up. Let's not play around here. But to your point about Kendrick Perkins, when we talk about the media coverage of the Celtics, right? Obviously, I think that both of us hold the Celtics to a very high standard over everybody in the league. When the Celtics are on their game and they're hitting shots and they're playing good defense, what team is going to beat the Boston Celtics in the NBA right now? Probably nobody. So when it comes to media coverage with the Celtics in the media, when they see that they blew a 30-point lead to the Hawks, they overreact. Like Kendrick Perkins, like this, I don't trust the team. Brian Windhorst, that was the worst loss I've ever seen. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, the Celtics, they're never going to get the benefit of the doubt. They're always going to be judged to a higher degree. And that's why I think, you kind of have to just turn off ESPN if the Celtics lose to an inferior team, because it's just going to be bad PR.
So I'm already preparing myself. Well, first of all, anything that happens between now and the end of the regular season does not matter. I would rather go 0-10 in these final games than go 10-0 and possibly lose someone to injury. These games really don't matter, and they pretty much have the 1 seed in the NBA locked up. That magic number is 5, and that's assuming us going 5-5 clinches it, assuming that Denver and OKC go 10-0, which they're not going to. So really, honestly, you need to win 3 to 4 games over the course of the final 10 games. You can do that mixing and matching people in the roster. During the 9-game winning streak and the loss to Atlanta, we had 10 different starting lineups. I imagine it's going to be similar down the stretch, but the regular season doesn't matter. Get in the right mindset, get the ample amount of rest, and kind of balance rest versus rust. But you already know the first time they lose a game in the playoffs, whether it's even in the first round or the second round, that first loss is going to automatically mean oh, here we go again with the Celtics. You can't trust this team in the playoffs. Choking coming. Insert team name in minimum number of possible games they could beat us in. Going forward, that's going to be the case. I don't know what the Celtics did to get this level of hate across the league, but they can't do anything about it. They can keep talking about no rings, all that stuff. We're not the franchise with the most amount of rings, and saying the playoff chokers are the Dallas Cowboys. That might be a better comparison for the 76ers that can't get past the second round, not the Celtics where their floor is the Eastern Conference Finals. Then they've added 2 additional all-star level players and have been running through the league. So at the end of the day, the play is going to have to do the talking. So yeah, not much you can do about it now until the playoffs start. Just get in the good habits and balance rest versus rust down the stretch.
Yeah, I agree. But I want to move to a guy that we mentioned before a little earlier ago, in Peyton Pritchard, who's played exceptional. Obviously, players have been hurt. They've, rested, whatnot. And he stepped up in a big way. He's gone 21 for 42, 50% from the line in the last 5 games they've played, averages 7.5 assists per game and 17.5 points per game. We've talked about him, how he's probably a mismatch in the playoffs. If you're going to allow him to play defense or whatnot, that's somebody who probably the other team could expose on the offensive side of the ball. From the play that you've seen so far from him, do you think you have more trust in him now in valuable minutes in the playoffs, or do you think they should still be hesitant to play him a lot in the playoffs?
I absolutely have more trust in him right now. You can see his confidence level is just growing. He's shooting with no hesitation. He's attacking the rim. This is the best version of Peyton Pritchard I've ever seen. This is as much as you could have possibly hoped and anticipated for out of him. I remember when he signed that contract extension, because after, barely playing the last year or two and then kind of asking to be traded, and then he's kind of one of the few guys that remain from the previous year, everyone's like, well, what dirt does this guy have on Brad? And then, when they saw the contract, they're like, oh, wholly overpay, things like that. But it's he's been so valuable to this team. And he's taken that point guard role off the bench, in stride. He's not quite Malcolm Brogdon, what he did last year, but I feel like he's also a less selfish player while giving you important offense. He hasn't been a huge liability defensively, at least for someone, given his size and stature, could be. So I certainly think that he will play a valuable role in the playoffs. He will get minutes. Now, you're not going to play him down the stretch, barring, knock on wood, an injury, but he can give you solid minutes where it's especially offensively, you don't really lose a step. So I've loved what I've seen from him. Not just him, but Hauser, Cornette, all of them seem playable. Hauser, he struggled against Atlanta, but prior to that, he's been a sniper. He's been an assassin, and he's going to get open looks. Because if you leave him, you can't leave him open. So that means somebody else on the team is going to be open. Like, you can't double team him. His shot just opens up everything on offense. And yeah, they have more depth than we gave them credit for going into this year and over the course of the season. So we're kind of at the trade deadline, who we wanted, like Lonnie Walker or, like certain scoring options off the bench. But, like, really, they kind of have everything they need in-house. And plus, without messing with the chemistry of everything, like, the team looks great. Looks like a championship caliber team from top to bottom. And another thing people need to realize is, like, it doesn't really matter who's the best 1 through 12. Because in the playoffs, especially as you go further, the rotations shorten and shorten. You have your starting 5. You have Al. Okay, that's 6. We're looking at probably an 8-man rotation. So that's Pritchard giving you minutes. That's Cornette giving you minutes. You can, sparingly throw Tillman in there, maybe Springer for like a last second, defensive possession, something like that. But it's like, you don't need the best 1 through 12. The Celtics have by far the best 1 through 5, by far the best 1 through 6. And given the roles that we need and expect from the remaining guys on the bench, we couldn't really ask for more, because they play unselfishly. They play in the course of the team.
Yeah, I agree. I think probably if you're going to do an 8-man rotation, I would imagine it would be Al, Pritchard, and Hauser, maybe. I would think probably, and maybe Cornette, maybe you see him get a couple of minutes here and there, but I don't know if we'll see a ton of them. I definitely think Hauser would get some quality minutes along with Pritchard and then obviously Al. But yeah, we have a pretty deep team, and I think a lot of people maybe didn't think that at the beginning of the season. I know we were, obviously, you just said it, we were clamoring for a Lonnie Walker, a Corey Kispert, I don't even know who else, like whoever to come off the bench and give, real depth scoring. But, even Svi coming off the bench, hitting a couple threes here and there, like he's shown that he can score too. But just imagine if we kept Baton or with Delano Baton that we traded to Portland.
That was never gonna happen in Boston though. Like, he was never gonna get the run and opportunity to become the player he is. Good for him and good on Brad on setting him somewhere where he will play. But like, people freaking out, we didn't lose 28 points per game off the bench. That was never going to happen here. Like, it could be, the N1 mixtape tour with a minute and a half left in the game. We're up by 30. Probably a bad number to use right now, but like, it didn't really matter because he wasn't going to get that role here. If he was ever playing big minutes in Boston, it means this team is probably in a lot of trouble. So good for him. Happy for him. He's doing well in Portland. Hopefully he continues to develop his role there and continue to be this player. But there was no room for him here. And it's like, you kind of felt like that about Pritchard for a while, like, maybe in a different system with more leeway and like runway as far as playing, he would develop into that player. He's managed to do it in limited roles that has built himself into more extended roles here. So, happy for everybody. Everything worked out. Like I said, I would have loved Lonnie Walker, but if you get Lonnie Walker, you're either cutting Peyton Pritchard's minute and possibly creating problems, or you're trading Peyton Pritchard, and like, who knows what all that stuff does to the locker room for a team that's that good. And you're looking at the 7th, 8th man on the bench, like, was it really worth it to mess with things when everything was good as it is? Like, in the moment, yeah, you wanted that, but like, when you look at the totality of the team and the season, like, I think I'm glad we stood pat mostly. I mean, we did make minor acquisitions, but that we didn't really mess with anything.
I mean, I think Tillman was just more of a KP insurance just in case KP goes down and he's not available in the playoffs.
Or
and
Jaden Springer, I think, throw an Al jersey on him. This is a similar thing.
Because he's like Al. And then I would guess that Jaden Springer is more of a future project type thing, like someone to keep in the system and maybe to build up to maybe he can become, Peyton Pritchard to a degree. He has a 3-point shot. He can defend really well, as we saw against the Bulls in the last 4 seconds. And then he played minutes against Atlanta. And, he's obviously not going to play at all, I would assume, in the playoffs, barring injuries to Drew or Derek White or whatnot. But turns out they didn't really need to make any crazy moves for Lonnie Walker, Corey Kispert. They had all the shooting in-house, and it's good on Brad to move, Banton and Lamar Stevens to a lesser team so they can go and, grow into better players and get the minutes that they needed. Because like you said, they were never going to get it here, no matter, what the situation was. Even if Tatum was hurt or whatnot, I don't think we'd see them getting 28, 31 minutes a night like Banton's getting in Portland. So it is what it is. So I want to move towards Celtics in the playoffs. Obviously, they're going to be in the first round. What is your biggest strength heading into the postseason, and also the biggest weakness for the Boston Celtics? I think for me, one of my weaknesses is their third quarter. I think historically, or not historically, but in the last couple of seasons, their third quarter tends to be their worst quarter. And if they fix that issue, I think that solves a lot of their problems with blowing leads. and their strength is just their personnel. So what about you?
So personnel is definitely the strength. They're going to be the most talented team in any series that they play, especially a first round opponent. And we can go into discussing the possibilities there, and who we'd most like to see, who we'd least like to see. I think complacency is a big thing, and that's a lot of what happens when you talk about the third quarter team. Is that especially when we're up big, like when we're up by double digits heading into the third quarter, you can see a lot of they're already looking ahead to the next opponent, or the end of the game, whatever they're doing later that night, or okay, well, this game's over. Like, you have to come out and just put your foot in their throat. Like, if it's an 18-point lead coming out of the third, like into the third quarter, have that be in the 20s by the time the fourth quarter hits. Not have it be 8 or 9. That's literally the difference in the game. So I'd like to think, especially Tatum and Brown, by now having done this so many years in a row, and now adding veterans and Drew Holiday and Porzingis, that they have their eyes on the prize. They know what the overall goal is. And like, the longer you play around with the team, besides risking losses, you risk injuries, and it just builds minutes and fatigue, which can affect you in the later rounds. Like, which is a big reason I want Miami. We can get into that. Is like, I remember everybody at the end of 2022 was losing on purpose to avoid Brooklyn. Everybody was scared of Brooklyn. And Jaylen Brown was like, we're not a track team. We're not running from anybody. And I think they came out with the right mindset. They wanted Brooklyn. They wanted them. They wanted the smoke. And they came and took it right to him, took care of him in 4. Whereas last year, it was almost we didn't get a favor getting Atlanta in the first round, because especially the first game, they were up by 30 the whole time. They're like, okay, well, this is going to be a cakewalk. Then they, fucked around and found out. And that series went 6. And it was a single-digit ball game in the final minutes of game 6 where it could have potentially gone 7. Then you never know what can happen, Like, don't play with your food. Like, that's why I almost want, like, whatever the most difficult role possible from the get-go, I'd like to get out of the way, because I think it'll have them focused and ready to go from the jump, versus getting in Atlanta or Chicago, where that should be an easy 4-game sweep. But I think natural habits come into play, and they may lose a game that they shouldn't just because they don't respect the opponent, whether they say it publicly or not. Like, I feel like that's what would happen.
So I have a question for you. You brought up how they said they weren't afraid of the Nets. Do you think Ime Udoka had any, I'm trying to think of a word. I'm not like sway or confidence in the team. Like, do you think he made a difference to like how the Celtics react? It's like, oh yeah, we're not afraid of Brooklyn. Like, we want to go at Brooklyn. Like, do you think his voice mattered a lot when it came to, Jaylen saying we're not going to avoid any team, like we're not a track team? Do you think he had any, say in that at all?
I mean, Ime was definitely an alpha male. Gonna ask the ladies around Boston, but he definitely brought that dog out of Tatum, out of Brown, out of Smart. Like, I think he brought a lot of that they had in them to the surface, especially for guys that were younger in their career, hadn't been on the big stage yet in the finals. Like, I think he got them in the right mentality, but I don't think they necessarily need that anymore. I'd like to think at this point they have that innate within them. So I'd say he definitely helped in that series. I think maybe with a different coach, it doesn't go the same way in the first round. I'm not saying they would have lost that series, but they were ready. They were up to the challenge that time around, which for me, if we can switch off now a little bit to the first round opponents, which is why I think the team that would give us the most trouble, I think, might be Indiana. But although the fact that they've lost to them twice this year in tight games means they might respect them a little bit more. But like, Indiana's a team that has no playoff experience. They may kind of overlook them versus Miami, which, they beat them last year in 7. We beat them the year before. But those are always battles. Like, I think they'll be up and ready for Miami, especially, in the first round. They're not catching anybody off guard this year. And then Philly, who knows if Embiid will be there. I think actually Philly without Embiid might pose a bigger threat to the Celtics. I don't think they'd lose either series, but I think they may not take them as seriously without Embiid, a la the first game of the second round last year when Embiid was ruled out, and then James Harden had his career playoff game. Because, again, they didn't take him as seriously and they lost that game. I think that something similar could happen with Philly, where they may lose a game, possibly 2, just because they play around with them without Embiid. Whereas if Embiid's there, I think it actually would be a shorter series, because I don't think he'll be in playoff conditioning shape. I think they'll run him off the floor. And 2, I think with Embiid on the floor, they take him a lot more seriously. And if the Celtics take an opponent seriously, they shouldn't lose. Definitely not 4 times out of 7. At least not till the finals. So I want, honestly, in descending order, Miami, Philly, then Indiana. Just because I think the Celtics would be more locked in and more engaged. What do you think, Jason?
So it's kind of tough because I go back and forth on it all the time. I know what you say about Miami. Indiana does have one dude that has playoff experience. Obviously, Siakam won it, so he has some experience to some degree to try to, be that voice to kind of guide that team through the playoffs. But obviously Siakam doesn't have Kawhi next to him, right? So it's a little different. Tyrese hasn't really been there. Nesmith obviously hasn't been there. So
Yeah,
it's,
that's another reason I don't want Indiana is the freak injury that is inevitable with Nesmith flying around the court. Like, not that can't happen with Miami because, Miami Heat culture always finds its way under our landing space. But I feel like Nesmith himself, and I don't know if he's intentionally dirty or not, but just the way he plays is just so reckless with, I don't want to say fragile players because they're not, but like if we wouldn't beat Indiana in 4, but we lose Porzingis for, a few weeks because, he like flew himself around and Porzingis got knocked to the floor and banged up, like that's not worth it,
Yeah. Do you think Nesmith only does it against us because we traded him? Like, do you think he holds that against the Celtics?
Well, I mean, it's hard to not feel that way when you see his Instagram posts after games against us. Like, it's like a personal vendetta. It's like, bro, like, you weren't good here. You weren't playing here. We traded you to an situation. Now they're a decent team, but they weren't when he got dealt there. You got playing time. Like, honestly, if he was still here, his best case scenario is he's playing like not the same role, but Peyton Pritchard or Sam Hauser minutes. That was his absolute ceiling here. And that's kind of what he became in Indiana. Like, he's not a star in that team. He doesn't start most nights, but he's getting real playing time, and it's helped him develop as a player, outside of kind of his dickhead posts and, like, the way he kind of acts. Like, you want to be happy for the guy that, he got himself paid nicely because of that. If he's in Boston, he doesn't get that contract. So he should actually be thankful for it.
Yeah, obviously, when you're going to compare players, I think honestly, it comes down to a 1v1. And would you rather have Nesmith or Hauser? To be honest, I mean that's
especially on the contract.
Hauser, because he's making I don't even know if he's making $1 million, but he's making not a lot of money, and he could probably shoot it better than Nesmith can. I know Nesmith wants to think he's a 3-point shooter, but I bet on him so many times to shoot threes, and he always lets me down. So we've basically covered that he can't shoot threes. But yeah, I mean, we're pretty much set for what we have coming to the playoffs. I don't know. I think I would rather see Miami because I know they'd get up for the game. I think Indiana would be a team like Atlanta was last year where they take us to probably 6 games. And I don't think the Celtics need to go 6 games in the first round with a team. And plus, Indiana, what are they? They know they're probably going to not make it far anyway, so they're going to try their absolute hardest to take us out. And Nesmith is going to be the forefront right there, hyping up his guys to come take out the Celtics and try to upset us first round. And if that ever happened, I don't know when we would do an episode after that series because it would be so tough to.
I'd be in a remote location overseas, wearing traditional Islamic garment, using a voice diffuser. It wouldn't be nice for me on here. I wouldn't have a Twitter anymore. So, but yeah, I really don't want Indiana. Let Milwaukee have them, and I think Milwaukee should beat them if they take it seriously. But like, I think that based on how the regular season went, that'd actually be a good series. I think that would be a 6-game series, it has the potential to be. Milwaukee could sweep them. They could also go 7. Yeah. So I trust Indiana more against Milwaukee than I do against us. Looking at it from a non-Celtics fan point of view,
absolutely. I would love to see Indiana versus Milwaukee because what the incident happened when Giannis scored. I don't even know what milestone he hit, but remember Indiana took the ball and he chased Indiana down the hallway. Like that was some heated matchups when Indiana would always face the Bucks. So that would actually be if that was a first round matchup, that would actually be pretty cool to see because I think the Bucks would actually have to try in that series to beat them.
This is just what I see right now. I just got like a vision in my head. I see the 1-8 being Boston, Philly. The 2-7 being Milwaukee, Indiana, the 3-6 being New York and Miami, assuming Miami can actually win some games and get up to 6, which they're a game back of, and then the 4-5 being Orlando, Cleveland. I think those would be 4 good series if that ends up being the case. We'll see. I mean, that could all be false, but that just is a vision I had, and I mean, those would be 4 good first-round matchups.
Oh, absolutely. I think that would be some great first-round basketball, and I think the Miami-New York series would be an absolute dogfight, and in my mind, that goes 7 games. Absolutely, there's no doubt.
Really could go either
Robinson. Way. Yeah, I think so. Well, it honestly depends on OG Anunoby. I know he has that elbow thing. He's now out again after having that surgery. He came back, played a couple games, and now he's out again. So I don't even know when he'll be back. But they're getting Mitchell Robinson back, I believe Friday. They said he's questionable for tonight. So I don't know if he'll play tonight, but I'm sure he'll play their next game. But speaking of our own injuries, obviously Drew Holiday's been out the last 4 or 5 games. Full participant at shooting, Practice today, they're not playing. I'm thinking they're having shoot around today, but they're not. Do you hold anything in that injury? Obviously, we know it came out he had dead arm. Then he came out and said, no, I don't have dead arm. I was just hitting the arm. It went numb, but it's not dead arm. Celtics have had some issues in the past with injuries, telling the truth, especially with Rob Williams and Malcolm Brogdon, two that come to mind. You think it's anything serious? You think this is just, it is what it is at this point, and they're just holding him out extra just to get him some extra rest?
I'd lean more towards that, with it being slightly more serious. Now, we shout out to Noah, who let us know, by the time this airs, it may already be out, but that Drew Holiday is probable to play tomorrow. We'll see what happens, but it's likely he plays tomorrow. I would say if the Celtics were in the Bucks position or the Cavs position where they're like right around that 2-3 and they're fighting for seeding, I think he would have come back already. I think the Celtics have the luxury to be able to rest any injuries, to be able to be without anybody for any extended period of time right now, since these games really don't matter to us until April 20th, April 21st. None of the games really do. So we can be very careful. We can be very cautious with bringing him back. The severity of it, I mean, obviously it kept changing. Now, he doesn't have dead arm. That kind of worries you at first when he said that. And you start thinking in your mind, like, is this another Malcolm Brogdon situation? Because Drew Holiday, I mean, obviously his defense is the biggest thing he provides to the team outside of his leadership. But his shooting ability, the floor spacing that he provides that you didn't really get from Marcus Smart, at least consistently last year, is so valuable and vital to this team. And that's the thing you start worrying about if he's hurt or if he's missing a long period of time, if he starts getting out of rhythm as a shooter. So I think they can play it safe. If they do play him tomorrow, maybe it's like, okay, we'll play you one game, take another game off, then we'll try playing you two games, not a back-to-back, and start, building you back up. We have that luxury due to the fact that, we've been so good. We have the best record and we've already clinched the 1 seed, that we don't need to force anybody to do anything if they don't need to. And I think they both understand, both Drew and the Celtics medical staff and the front office, they understand what the goal is and they can talk transparently about where he's at. And honestly, I mean, you want everybody ready for the first round, but if keeping him out 2 additional weeks means he's going to be full strength versus playing him at 50% in the first round and it's a probability to re-aggravate it, I think honestly they would do it. They would hold him out because you got to look big term, long term. And as much as we'd love to have Drew on this team, if you can't beat an 8 seed, granted, who the 8 seed is could change a little bit for our outlook on it. But if you can't beat the 8 seed without Drew Holiday, when you still have Tatum, Brown, Derek White, Porzingis, then maybe we weren't really good enough in the first place, So I think they're going to do what's best for him, what's best for the team. I expect him back very soon, and I expect him hopefully full strength come playoff time.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, if his injury is something of significance to the point where, you don't want to rush him back, right? You want him to be 100% by the playoffs. But if he's still not 100% come round 1, he doesn't need to play. That team should be well taken care of, from Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, Al, Pritchard, and whoever else is going to play, to beat them in 4 or 5 games and then move on. Then you have 100% healthy Drew playing Miami or whoever else you're going to face. So there's no need to rush things, they're not the team of recent years where oh, Malcolm needs to come back, or wow, we're not going to beat this team if we don't have Rob Williams. And then they rush Rob back, and then he re-injured his knee, and then he had his 3rd knee surgery. And when he got traded to Portland, he hasn't played this year much at all. Because I think the Celtics, they tried to rush him back because they knew that they needed him. Because you can't play Al 40 minutes a night. He's up there in age. You can't do that. But now that we have Porzingis and Al and Tillman, obviously it's better now, that we don't have to rely on Rob Williams. And then Drew, obviously, I think the good thing with Drew is it's a shoulder rather than an elbow. Because the elbow is where a lot of your nerves connect. Obviously, I used to pitch, so a lot of the time, you worry about when you have an elbow injury of the UCL. That can be, I think, Brogdon had a tear in one of his ligaments in his UCL. I think that's kind of why it made things difficult for him to come back. But no, we should be good. Drew should be able to come back and add valuable minutes to this team when he decides to play or when he's healthy.
I think another thing to keep in mind with these injury reports for the doom and gloom people that freak out of everything is that you're going to see a lot of players from the Celtics on the injury report down the stretch. They're going to pick a ligament or a muscle out of a hat for why they're injured. And you don't need to immediately WebMD it and find out that they're going to miss the season. They're probably resting. It's 99%, especially Porzingis. I can, go out on a limb here and say he's not going to play all 10 of the remaining 10 games. They don't need him to, So you don't need to freak out. a situation like Drew's is a little different because there's actually a slight injury there. So, okay, but like Porzingis is going to be out, I'd say, for 4 to 5 of the final 10 games, like minimum. He's not hurt. Like, I know people like to convince themselves he is. He's not. Otherwise, he wouldn't be playing at all right now. Because if you're worried about Drew and you're being cautious with him, Porzingis is more important and he's a bigger injury risk. So I really don't think he'd play at all if he was hurt, like in the slightest. They have the luxury of being in this position where they can rest these guys. Obviously, you worry about rust a little bit, but like, you have plenty of time to practice. You have plenty of time to get things right. No matter what the Celtics did this season, but if they were in a position to be in a top 2 seed, they're going to have a week off from the last game of the season till the first game of the playoffs. So you're going to already have that added rust anyways. They're in a position where they don't need to have anybody get injured, which is why I think when they went up 30 on Atlanta, they started, kind of just jacking up threes. They didn't want to drive as much because drives are more often than not where injuries are going to happen, where you're going to get bruised up, banged up, where you can land on somebody's ankle. And so I think there was mitigating risk up 30, just, figuring, okay, well, we can still finish this game out, playing a much easier style of basketball, and that didn't work. So it'll be a benefit of like, yeah, you want to be competitive. You still like to win a few more games this year. You don't like losing. But at the end of the day, having the guys be rested and not injured is the main goal.
Yeah, you want them to rest 100%, versus playing the Hawks, Pelicans, Hornets down the stretch, right? The game mean nothing. Take them out, rest, and then be ready for round 1. So I do want to move to our final segment. We're looking at the road ahead here. Obviously, they're probably going to beat the Hawks by 55 on Thursday because I'm sure probably most of the team will play after what happened, if I had to guess. Then we got the Pelicans on Saturday, the Hornets on Monday, and then we got the Thunder on Wednesday. I obviously the Thunder are the game that sticks out if I'm just going by the next 5 games. They do have 2 games left, I would say, or probably 3. If we're going to count the Thunder, because Thunder are a good team, they probably have 3 games left in the schedule of some sort of like they're playing a team that's, they could see in the playoffs besides the Thunder because they're in the Western Conference. They got Bucks and Knicks coming up at the end of the year here. But you said last episode that we'll have the main Celtics will be playing the last 3 games there. So anything on their schedule that sticks out to you for any sort of significance?
I can almost guarantee. I wish Wick would just pay the fine to not have them play at all in Milwaukee. I don't think the New York game at home or the Milwaukee game on the road, they're going to play anybody or play them for any significant period of time. OKC one, even though that one's not in the East, I could see that being one, A, because it's at home, and B, because we lost the first time. That like, okay, that's another one we'll go with a full run for our guys. Just to put that doubt in OKC's mind. Now, I don't think OKC is coming out of the West. I'd actually be shocked, even despite their record, just due to the youth, inexperience, and then going up against a tough Western Conference. I would be shocked if we saw them again after that. But even just put that doubt in their mind, like for the Celtics, it's like other than Denver, it's the only other team they haven't beat this year. So to just put that doubt in their mind, maybe that's the game they do it. But like I said, at the end of the day, they've already wrapped everything up. By that point, they may have wrapped up the 1 seed for the entire NBA as well. If not, that could be the game that does it with OKC. So it's just deciding, what course to go. So I'm going to try to not get myself wrapped up in like, living and dying by the results of these games. I would like to beat Atlanta on Thursday just because of what happened the other day. And I would like to kick the shit out of them. But it doesn't really matter, like they could lose the next 10 games. They'll probably still end up with the number 1 overall seed. And they're already the 1 seed in the East. So the results really don't matter. And I hope Celtics fans can understand that. Stay off Twitter. Stop letting these people, terrorize you online. It really doesn't matter, but I would imagine they'll win at least 5 of the final 10, so it shouldn't even have to worry about the overall 1 seed.
So the only thing that we have to worry about with these last couple of games is they do finish the year with 2 TNT games, which if you're going by prime time, I guess you said if you're an All-NBA, you got to play most of them unless there's an actual injury there. And then also OKC is an ESPN game, so that's national, I guess, too. So
Jordan Wall's coming out party.
Jordan Walls, Jaden Springer, that kid Peterson, who literally looks like Sam Hauser, who is up in Boston. People are like, damn, who's that guy? He's just another shooter as well. And then obviously you finish the year with Hornets and Wizards, which is just what the Bucks get every other night. So it's fine. At least we get them at the end of the year. Like, oh yeah, that's right. Oh, I forgot. He's the Hornets. You see all those stories that came out about Grant saying how he was such like a bad teammate and he was going after Luka all the time in practice.
Well, and then Tatum said cap on it. Mike Gorman's the one who said it. So I feel like I'm going to lean towards Mike Gorman on it. I think Tatum likes him personally and they're friends.
Yeah.
So that's why he's saying that to defend his buddy in public. But I would give Mike Gordon some leeway there. So we'll see how the Grant Williams tribute video goes. You can just show Game 7 highlights against the Bucks.
No, it's gonna be when he went head to head with Jimmy Butler and got
They're gonna be
that
that,
3
and then when he goes to Donovan Mitchell, he's gonna make both of them. But
it's just going to be a roast video for Grant coming back to Boston. But I mean, it is what it is. If we had Grant on a team now, you think we're any better? Probably not. Probably lose a couple
no,
games.
I don't think. I mean, I'd say you like to have him out there based on what he did the last couple of years. I like our team how it is right now. I don't think we need him.
Yeah.
I think going into the season, you would have loved to have this roster with Grant Williams on it. You would have felt a little better about it, the depth. I think right now, who's he taking minutes from? I'd rather have Hauser out there than him. I think Hauser does one thing much better. I think.
Shit, who would he be taking minutes from if he's playing?
Not
Because
Pritchard. I think Hauser is a big part of it. I think the one thing you'll miss him for is if you get an Embiid or a Giannis down the road and you don't have Al on the floor, those added minutes that he provided where he could body them up and defend them. I mean, he's not going to stop them, but he'd pick up some fouls. He would, make them work.
Yeah, I think Tillman though would probably take that role to a point because Tillman's a big body, right? He can defend to a degree, so I think he probably takes that. But Grant he had that that energy, that passionate, I'm gonna go at you no matter what. I don't care if I get embarrassed or what. And I think that's kind of what the Celtics liked about him. But he's in Charlotte now, and he gets to shoot his way to do whatever, and that's that. It kind of sucked that Mavs didn't work out because it looked like he was going to work out there in Dallas for a little while, and then he was going at Luka all the time. And they're like, "Yeah, you're not going to go at Luka. We'll trade you to Charlotte."
They did well for themselves getting PJ Washington, though. They definitely won that trade.
Oh yeah, 100%. PJ Washington's a great scorer. Well, he's not a great scorer. He's a good scorer, but he complements their rotation and their starting lineup in Dallas very well.
I would have been much more worried if he went to a Milwaukee or something like that. So,
I mean, we can just be thankful that Marcus Smart wasn't healthy, so that Memphis wasn't tempted to trade him to Milwaukee.
Yeah, especially now with the Pat Bev news today that I don't even know if he will miss time. I think he's putting that out there, so he's playing through something. But if he's not, 100%, and Pat Bev is still only an okay NBA player, that does hurt them a lot because they gave up campaign, which was offense off the bench in the trade-off for defense, and now if he's compromised, that team gets shorter and weaker. The rotation gets shorter and weaker.
Yeah, I don't know. On his pod today, it didn't sound like he was like, "All right, guys, I'm done. I'm out for the season." It sounded like he threw it out there, and he's going to try to play through it. It's his right hand, so I mean, I don't know how that's going to. Obviously, shooting, it's going to affect him shooting. I don't know if defensively, if that's going to really do much defensively, but he was only probably going to play 13 minutes a night anyway. It's not like he was going to put up valuable minutes for them. They're going to run Dame out there 45 minutes a night and see what they can do with him. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. You got any final thoughts here?
Just trying to get through this next month so the games really matter. So, like I said, I'm not living and dying with the results over the final 10 games here. I'll still watch the games. It'll be even more fun at the end, the last few games when, people are actually complaining, the Celtics fans, at the beginning of the game, the Celtics are almost boring to watch now when they're on their 9-game winning streak, when they had won 20 out of 22 and they're up 30 in the first half, where it's he almost liked it when they came back a little bit because it made the game more interesting, and then it went off the deep end there. But just enjoy these games now that don't matter and that you're not all stressed out during, because it's going to come hard at you fast once the playoffs come. Especially we get a Miami in round one and we're just there from the start.
I know it's gonna be brutal, but we got about 9 games left, so we'll get through it. But as I said at the beginning of the show, Justin Turpin will be on the show next Friday at 2 p.m. I believe that's the date and time that's scheduled right now. So we will have more in-depth playoff analysis come then and more thoughts from him on the team and everything going on with the Celtics. So that will do it for us at Dynasty Proud. We are on X at BSEN_617, and we are on YouTube at Dynasty Proud 18 and on Twitter as well. So we will see you guys in the next one.